As I arrived at the little cabin nestled in the Idaho mountains, a sense of tranquility washed over me. I had rented this remote retreat to finish the novel I had been working on for months. The cabin sat beside a slow-running stream, its gentle murmur soothing to my weary soul. The first few days were peaceful. The cabin's isolation allowed me to make significant progress on my book. In the evenings, I would sit on the back porch, sipping wine and watching the sunset below the horizon, casting shadows over the forest. But then, on the fourth evening, things took a turn. I was on the porch, the crimson hues of twilight casting an eerie glow, when I noticed something in the tree line. A thin, shadowy figure, about 10 feet tall, stood there. It wore what looked like a long-brimmed hat, obscuring its face entirely. My heart quickened as I watched it. Paralyzed by fear, it seemed to be gazing directly at me, its featureless silhouette hauntingly unnatural. I blinked, thinking it might be a trick of the fading light, but it remained there for about 10 seconds, unmoving. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished, dissipating into thin air. I was left shaken, unsure if my eyes had betrayed me. I retreated into the cabin, convincing myself that it was mere paranoia. I prepared a small dinner, hoping to distract my mind, but the image of that figure lingered, like a dark stain on my consciousness. Night fell, and I retired to bed, determined to shake off my unease. As I drifted into sleep, I was plagued by vivid, horrifying nightmares. I woke up in a panic, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the darkness of the room, and then dread washed over me like an icy wave. In the corner of my room, the same figure stood. Just as it had at twilight, it watched me with an otherworldly intensity, and I couldn't move or utter a word. The seconds stretched into an agonizing eternity as I lay there paralyzed. After what felt like an eternity, the entity began to dissolve, vanishing into thin air once more. Gasping for breath, I fumbled for the light switch and illuminated the room, my pulse racing. There was nothing there. Fear had taken hold of me, and there was no chance of falling back asleep that night. I lay there, trembling, until the first rays of dawn crept through the curtains. When the morning light bathed the cabin, I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. Without wasting a moment, I quickly packed my belongings and left. As I drove away from the cabin in the woods, I couldn't help but wonder about the entity that had invaded my solitude. Was it a figment of my imagination, a product of isolation and exhaustion, or something far more dangerous? I may never know for sure, but one thing was certain. That little cabin in the Idaho mountains held secrets I could never unravel, and a darkness I hoped to leave behind forever. I can feel my heart pounding as I sit in the dimly lit cabin deep within the woods. The wind outside howls like a banshee, and the trees cast shifting shadows on the walls. I came here seeking solace, a peaceful escape from the chaos of the city, but now I fear I have found something far more sinister. The cabin, a rustic relic of a bygone era, gives off a musty odor that hangs in the air like a thick fog. The fireplace, the only source of warmth and light, crackles and sputters, its flames casting shadows that seem to take on grotesque forms. The darkness beyond the cabin's windows is like a black hole, as if the night itself has swallowed the forest. I tried to shake off my unease, reminding myself that this is just a temporary escape from the stresses of life. Yet, a chilling sensation lingers as if unseen eyes watch my every move. As the night wears on, I hear strange sounds echoing through the woods. Twigs snap under an unknown weight, and faint whispers drift through the trees. My rational mind tells me it's just the wind playing tricks on me, but my instincts scream otherwise. I reach for the lantern and light it. Its feeble glow barely reaches the corners of the room, but it's enough to fend off the darkness that threatens to engulf me. I decide to check the cabin's door, hoping to find some peace in knowing it's securely locked. But as I approach, I notice something odd. The door is slightly ajar. I could have sworn I bolted it shut before settling in for the night. My heart races as I slowly push it open, and there, on the doorstep, lies a single crimson rose. I'm sure I'm alone in this cabin, or at least I thought I was. Panic begins to claw at the edges of my mind. Who could have left this here, and why? My fingers tremble as I pick up the rose, its petals unnaturally cold to the touch. The sight of it sends shivers down my spine. As I turn to place the rose on a nearby table, a voice, soft and sinister, whispers from the darkness behind me. "You should have never come here." I spin around, my lantern's light revealing nothing but empty space. My heart hammers in my chest, and I'm frozen in fear. There is no one here, just the empty cabin and the sinister darkness outside. I try to convince myself that it was just a figment of my imagination, but doubt gnaws at me. I clutch the lantern tighter, its light flickering as my hand shakes. With every creak of the cabin's wooden floorboards, I can't help but feel that I am not alone. The shadows in the corners of the room seem to move, stretching and contorting into grotesque shapes. I know I should leave, but the fear has paralyzed me. Suddenly, a gust of icy wind blows through the open door, extinguishing the lantern's flame. The cabin is plunged into darkness, and I'm left with nothing but the echoes of my own breath. Panic takes over, and I fumble for the matches in my pocket, praying that they haven't been misplaced. I strike a match, and the small flame casts eerie, elongated shadows on the cabin walls. Then, I see it, a figure standing in the corner of the room, obscured by the flickering light. Its presence chills me to the bone, and I can feel its gaze upon me. It's tall and gaunt, with long skeletal fingers that reach towards me. I stumble backwards, tripping over a chair and falling to the floor. The figure moves closer, its steps slow and deliberate. I can hear its raspy breathing, like the whisper of death itself. With one last desperate strike of the match, I catch a glimpse of its face, contorted and twisted into a grotesque mask of anguish. Its hollow eyes lock into mine, and in that moment, I know I've stumbled upon something unspeakably evil. I scramble to my feet, the match extinguishing as it burns down to my fingers. In complete darkness, I blindly grope for the door, my heart pounding in my chest. I manage to fumble my way outside, leaving the cabin and its sinister inhabitant behind. As I sprint through the woods, the wind howls in my ears, and I can't shake the feeling that the figure is pursuing me. I dare not look back, for fear of what I might see. Eventually, I burst through the trees and into the open, gasping for breath. The cabin is nothing but a distant silhouette, and I pray that whatever dwells within remains confined to its sinister realm. Our anniversary weekend had started with such excitement and anticipation. My wife and I had rented a cozy cabin in the woods of Minnesota, expecting it to be a romantic getaway to celebrate our years together. We arrived at a cabin on Friday evening, the sun casting a warm, golden glow over the trees. The cabin looked inviting, nestled among the tall pines, its wooden exterior a picturesque sight. We began unloading our belongings for the weekend, eager to settle in. As we entered the cabin, we were met with an unexpected sight. Dirty dishes lay piled up on the kitchen sink, a stark contrast to the pristine appearance we had expected. We looked at each other confused but decided to shrug it off, not wanting to let it ruin our anniversary celebration. We tidied up the dishes and put them away, determined to make the most of our stay. The first days passed pleasantly. We explored the surroundings, taking leisurely walks along the nature trails that wound through the woods. The tranquility of the forest was enchanting, and we soon forgot about the initial oddity of the dirty dishes. It was late afternoon when we returned from our hike, the sun beginning its descent beyond the trees. As we entered the cabin, a creeping unease settled in. Some of our food was missing, and it appeared that our belongings had been rummaged through. Our bags lay open, their contents thrown about. Our minds raced to make sense of the intrusion. We locked the cabin securely and reasoned that perhaps we were overreacting, attributing the unsettling incident to our tired minds playing tricks on us. Did we leave this mess and forget about it? Dinner and a bottle of wine helped us relax, and we decided to put the strange occurrence behind us. After all, we were here to celebrate our love, and nothing could spoil that. As night came, we retired to the bedroom, eager to be close and share the love that had grown between us over the years. Wrapped in each other's arms, we soon drifted into a deep slumber. Morning arrived with a jolt, and I reached out to hold my wife, only to find her side of the bed empty. Panic coursed through me as I sat up and surveyed the room. It was then that I noticed our car keys were missing, along with our car itself. Parked just outside the cabin, the realization hit me like a thunderbolt. Someone had been in the cabin with us during the night, stealing our belongings and our means of escape. The feeling of vulnerability was overwhelming, and I knew we needed to get help immediately. Leaving behind most of our possessions, we walked several miles to the nearest town, where we reported the theft to the company that had rented us the cabin. The authorities were notified, and we provided them with all the information we could. Returning to the cabin with a sense of trepidation, we decided to thoroughly search the place. In one of the closets, we found a makeshift bed, a blanket, and empty food cans scattered about. It was clear that someone had been living here without our knowledge. The horror of the situation dawned on us. We had shared a confined space with an intruder, completely unaware of their presence. The thought creeped me out. Knowing that they could have harmed us in our sleep, it was a chilling revelation. Days passed, and our car was eventually found abandoned on a remote side road, nearly 60 miles away from the cabin. However, the thief was never caught. The authorities were unable to apprehend them. Our anniversary weekend had become a terrifying ordeal, an anniversary we would never forget.